Hey everybody, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about skills for a red teamer today. My name is Brent White.
My name is Tim Roberts.
And so if you've seen any of our talks before, you know we like to focus on the physical pen test side of things. So as far as skills for a red teamer, we will cover those things. We'll focus on that a bit more than anything else. And something that too I want to point out, we like to make our talks interactive. So anytime if you have a comment, whether it's you're just being a smart ass or, if it's a legitimate question or whatever, please just, shout it out, raise your hand or whatever. We like to answer questions as we go and try to make it as fun as possible. And as you can tell from this slide, we're extremely immature and highly professional in our presentations. So, go ahead, Tim.
What do you mean by red teamer? So the term red team is kind of thrown around. It's a little subjective depending on what company you work for. Some people butt heads with it. So the way we're going to be using it in this presentation is a red team is pretty much an assessment done with the whole gambit. You throw it in, and it's kind of like a threat services or a simulation. So we're criminals. We're trying to break into your company. How are we going to do that? In this particular talk, it's a little less technical and more geared towards social engineering and physical security. But that does not go without. The technical part is often part of the red team. You get in, you try to connect to something, and then you try to hack into it, and you get out before they say anything. Or you get to a certain area, like an executive suite or the CTO's office, depending on what the client's wanting. What is their sensitive area? What's the goal of the assessment? What's in scope? So, red teamer is somebody that's part of a red team.
And we're done with our talk. So, thanks.
Thank you, guys.
No. Thanks. So, and you can tell, so if you have ADD like I do, you probably won't hear a lot of what we say because of ridiculous things like this. So, hopefully you can go back and watch the video later and actually, maybe hear what we're saying. So we're going to talk about a few different types of assessments to start off with: covert, overt, and then hybrid. So, what do those mean? Well, let's find out. And this is my foul-mouthed grandmother.
She's a very sweet lady.
Sweet lady. Makes great biscuits. So, as far as covert assessments, we've had some trolls in the past. We did a DEF CON talk, and somebody was like, the short guy reads too many Tom Clancy novels. So we did this talk. It was geared towards, spy theme, because that was the whole DEF CON theme that year. So, anyway, I don't read too many Tom Clancy novels. I hate reading, actually. But so the whole point of that is I like to try to be sneaky. What tactics is an adversary going to use to try to get in, as Tim said, find as much sensitive information as possible without you knowing that they're there.
And the verbiage is also this is kind of what we use in the companies we work for. We use covert or overt or hybrid. These are different approaches to performing these kinds of assessments. Sometimes we'll do the covert stuff at first, and then we'll kind of do a walkthrough. We're walking through with the client saying, here's how we were able to do this. Here's how we emulate a badge. Here's how we were able to bypass this with a shove knife or with canned air, etc. Because sometimes the client wants to see that. They just don't want to take your word for it. They just don't want to say, okay, well, in the report it says that you did this, but, where's the pictures? Where's the video? Where's proof? Can you show me how you did it so that I'm a little bit more aware? And some people like to see that. So oftentimes we'll even wear body cams or something like that just to show to the client, depending on the state, because some places you're not allowed to film without their knowledge. But depending on the client, we'll film it and then we'll show it to them. Or not film it, I guess record it. We don't use film anymore, right?
Yeah.
And then show it to the client during the report review.
So an example of that recently, there was was doing a physical assessment on a location, and they had a room that they considered classified, and so on this door they had the lock was looked like a digital lock for a safe, and then to the right of that they had a fingerprint with pin pad. And so they didn't believe that I was able to get in there with a piece of plastic because they had all this money on these things with a door. And so after that assessment, I was able to walk through, and they're like, yeah, you can't get in here. There's no way. And I was like, yeah. So pull out a piece of plastic and just went right in the door and showed them, how to properly secure that door later. So
So some of the covert parts, and you guys will see some of the pictures in here from actual assessments that we did. The social engineering is oftentimes in scope for red teaming, obviously, and physical, at least for when we perform some of the red team assessments. This is a major driving factor part of it. To test the security awareness of the employees, to test the incident response oftentimes, to see if they escalate, to see if they follow through when they read the letter of authorization, whether it's a fake one or a real one, that they're following proper escalation procedures. It's kind of funny, this picture's here, the top right one. It was a human resource office. So Brent and I were walking around, and they had these really tall cubes, and Brent didn't really have a problem.
Yeah, they couldn't see me, so it was just,
So we're walking around this cubicle area, see human resources sign, and they actually have it listed on the side of the door. It says, file, HR file room or something like that. So I'm like, oh, that seems like an interesting room.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you for pointing that out. Now I found a place I want to get into. So we got into it. We ended up picking the lock. It was some kind of basic lock. Got in there, went through the files, grabbed the point of contacts folder, which was his employee folder. And I didn't know he wasn't allowed to see this, but I ended up delivering it to him, putting it on his desk, kind of as a proof of concept. Hey, look what we got into. And it was pretty funny.
I can't look at that.
I can't look at that. They wrote bad things about me.
So, and you can see too, that's my head right there. So we were able to get into another area, the security control room. And so this place, when we got in there, I was able to access this console, which controlled all of the security cameras. So at that point, we could basically disable all the security cameras. They also printed badges off there. So we had, the entire, employee directory, and basically, could do what we want. And something else too, to go back to the social engineering part, when you talk about, like phishing campaigns or something. So once you take the time to do your open source intelligence, you send out a really good phishing campaign. Hopefully you get some shells or you get some information from that. It's nice to be able, when you do a physical assessment and you go in there and you have those credentials already, that way if you do get physical access to a machine, you have creds that you can go ahead and log in, or if you have physical access, you can do whatever you need to do to shoot a shell back to the guys outside that are working on the external part. So you kind of mesh as a whole team for all these different assessment styles to basically just get whatever you can from the company, what's going to hurt them the most. And those are details that you work out. And we'll get into that in a second. So,
and two, with the social engineering, it's not just, hey, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try to lie to some people to try to get into a sensitive area. It includes USB drops and stuff like that. Because oftentimes we'll walk up to somebody and it's as simple as saying, hey, I'm testing network connectivity. I just need to plug this in real quick. Just take a second. And they scoot out of the way, or they'll roll out of the way and give you access to their system. I'm like, hey, actually, before I do this, go ahead and lock your system. They lock their system. I plug in the keylogger. I'm like, could you log back in and you do something? And they log back in, and I capture the domain credentials on the keylogger. It's really that easy. We've done that several times, and it works quite a bit. So. Yeah,
and one of the stories that I love to do whenever I'm walking in trying to let someone give me access to whatever is I say, hey, I'm here with a contractor, here's my legit business card, here's my letter. I've heard you guys have had complaints of slow internet, slow network. Every time someone always says, oh yeah, it's so slow, let me tell you, oh, and then that machine over there, it always does this, and they go and they start explaining all of these issues. And Tim's even had, where he did an assessment once doing the same thing, and the security guard started explaining to him, oh yeah, these cameras over here don't work, they haven't worked for a year. And Tim's like, well, can you go ahead and log in? And he watches 1, 2, 3, 4 or something stupid like that. And so
they had the default password on their security system. And we've talked about, I think we actually talked about this last year at our security guards LOL talk. But yeah, in that particular instance, I just walked over to the security guard and said that I was doing inventory and I was writing down serial numbers off of the systems. So I had a clipboard with me and I was writing serial numbers off of his system. And then he starts complaining about how bad their system is and poor camera coverage. It's not HD. It's this. And then he logs in and the password was literally 1111 or something. So,
Yeah, and just to add, it works so well. A retail location that I went into, hey, I'm here. I've heard you guys have had problems with the registers being slow and other things. So fake letter, let me in, leave me unattended in their server room so I could do inventory, and then I come out and they start logging into different point of sale machines and letting that open because, oh, this one is so slow, it locks up all the time. Oh, okay, could you go ahead and log me in and let me take a look at it? Oh, sure. Thank you for your help. It's like, no, thank you. So, are there any questions? So I know we've kind of talked quite a... Hey, Jason, what's up? April, everybody. We've talked... Sorry, squirrel. See, I tell ADD. That's it right there. So we've kind of covered quite a bit of stuff. If you any questions, anybody, just raise your hand again, and we'll stop. All right.
So what you can and cannot do, discuss these methods with the client during the kickoff call, not when you are on site. And also make sure that your letter of authorization, I like to leave out some details because the more detailed you get, the more granular you make your letter of authorization or your get out of jail free card, the more you can't do. So it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission oftentimes. So don't get in too much details, but keeping it pretty vague and open, it allows you to be more dynamic because these types of assessments, red team assessments or covert social engineering or physical, these are very dynamic assessment types. It's not like static where you're like, here's my methodology for my network penetration testing. So I go through these steps and this is how I complete it. For a social engineering type, depending on the person you're talking to, you're going to have to adjust your story. You're going to have to adjust things, and it's very dynamic. So it's very important that you are flexible, and that even your documents allow that flexibility.
And so, whenever before you start the assessment, you always want to make sure you have the details worked out. Like, okay, once we get in this building, if we have access, can we actually start to exploit things? Or if we find hard drives or USB drives or an unattended laptop or something, can we actually take that stuff out of the building with us? Some clients are okay with that depending on, the extent of the assessment, but it's always good to make sure that they're okay with those things. That way you're not trying to do damage control later. So.
Is incident response part of the assessment? So sometimes we will try to intentionally get caught, either by being absurd or wearing something bright or not wearing a badge, something like that, just to see. So after we've done everything, we've owned the system, we've got what we want, we got from point A to B, and now we're out. Let's give them the opportunity. What do we have to do that is so ridiculous for them to actually escalate and respond to this incident? And are they calling the person? So a lot of times, and we've talked about this in our talks before, is we use the fake letter of authorization just to see. And I've got the White House's address on it. I've got like a lot of ridiculous stuff. And when Brent and I were working together, I used to put his number on the bottom as a point of contact. So he'd be like the CSO or something like that. And we'd say, hey, here's the letter. And they would be good with it because they just glance over it. They just say, oh, okay, cool. And they fold it back up and they give it back to you. And they don't follow through and they don't escalate and they don't, ensure that you were actually supposed to be there and that you're just not lying to them. So we'll do that oftentimes. Other times, in this situation, it was pretty funny where the smiley face is. We had to kind of blur her out. But I walk over and I've got a clipboard that I have a RFID cloner and emulator in it. These days I kind of use a Proxmark 3 Easy because it's small. But I've got this clipboard and I walk over and I start talking to her and I said, hey, we're doing a badge inventory or something ridiculous like that. I start talking to her, I'm writing down things, and her badge is laying on her desk in her cubicle. So I just lay the clipboard on top of the badge. And then just to make sure, I even pick up her badge and I'm rubbing it across the clipboard just to make sure it's reading it. And when I went back to look at it, I logged it like 50 times, the same badge. But I'm like, she didn't question it. And one of the reasons why she didn't question it is because she turned around and Brent started this conversation with her about soccer or something.
Yeah, so the clipboard real quick, the funny thing about this... Oh my gosh.
And we're being attacked by...
Oh no.
T-Rexes.
Did you bring beer?
What's the beer? Oh.
I'm gonna move now. I don't know what's going on. There's no blood. You're not done yet. Woo! To
prevent death by PowerPoints.
Yeah. So, to add on to the clipboard thing, you have to get it pretty close. So he's sitting there. It's like, if we're doing badge inventory, and he has to rub it like this, and it's plastic on plastic, so it's making a scraping sound. And she's still not even saying anything. It's like the most ridiculous thing ever. And so, the social engineering part of that, as Tim starts doing that, I noticed that she has a picture of her daughter, with the soccer ball. And so I start talking to her about that. And it's like, yeah, I have a daughter too, and she plays soccer, and start building that, that trust. And as I say that, every time you feel so awful, because it's like, here you are not really lying, but taking advantage of a person just because of a picture they have on their desk. And you're digging into that, and it's an awful thing to do, but that's what criminals do, right? It's like they don't really care. They're gonna say what they need to say. They're gonna look for pictures or anything like that where they can build that connection with whoever they're interacting with. So.
And another assessment the security guard that was knitting a blanket, literally knitting a blanket.
Yeah, feet propped up, knitting a blanket.
Older lady, she probably did multiple roles wherever she was at. But yeah, she's sitting there knitting a blanket, and I was like, oh, that's an awesome blanket. And in order to get a replacement badge there, all you needed was the extension of the person, like their phone extension, and their last name. So I got on LinkedIn, I did some OSINT, found the guy's name, we went up, and I said I was this guy. I left my badge at the other facility. I need to get another one. Oh, by the way, this blanket's amazing. How long have you been working on it? Oh, most of the day. Okay. And it was well done too. I mean, she had exhausted a lot of her energy just on this hobby. So oftentimes, really look at your security guards too. Like, who are you hiring? What are they doing when they do this stuff? Are they distracted most of the time? What is your policy? Is your policy as simple as, hey, just provide a name? You don't have to provide your ID or anything. Just provide a name and extension, and then we'll give you a badge that accesses the entire facility. It just so happened this guy was one of their main network admins, so it gave me access to their data center and several other areas.
Everything. We were in there for 2 hours too. Yeah. It was a while. Yeah, we had a fun time. So on this picture on the right, we did an assessment where the covert part, we were able to go through and get information from people. And so the main goal, the main trophy, was to access the room with the sensitive information. So that would be healthcare files and employee data. It wasn't necessarily to get domain admin. So the worst thing for this company was if someone were to get in there to get healthcare information. So we actually do that. This is that room. Afterwards, kind of a funny thing is we were allowed in there too. The old, real thin filing cabinets that slam shut no matter how quiet you try to be. And there were people outside the door. They weren't even coming in to see what we were doing in there. And then as we were doing the walkthrough afterwards, we'd tell the client, well, let's say about going in that room. And no, you can't go in that room. It's the sensitive room. And it's okay, well, I've already seen it, so let's go into something else.
Yeah, in that room there that Brent is actually holding the door open, that's a training room. So they had that was their conference room, and it was unlocked on the other side. And this is how we got into that room, is because the door led to their highly sensitive area where they kept hard copies of all these files in these filing cabinets. So they didn't pay attention to that, and they had some kind of, I think it was a generic tumbler lock on it. So we were able to pick that lock and bypass.
Well, on the main door, the front door, it was a new dimple lock.
Oh yeah.
And then on that one, it was just we used we
used the shove knife for that one.
So. All right, overt assessments. Again, this is where once you go through, some clients will want you to walk through with them and say, show me what you did, or hey, I was kind of rushed. I couldn't get into this area. Let's go into that area, escorted, and I'll point out some whatever I find. So that's Tim, and that is a vending machine, and he's on top of that looking over into the server room.
Yeah, on the other side of that wall is the server room. They didn't have an IDS. They didn't have any kind of fence. It wasn't floor-to-ceiling walls. And they just so happened to have this nice Aquafina machine that I could climb up to and then get over. So that was kind of...
This was before the walkthrough, too. And this was right outside the lunchroom area. And no one asked, hey, why are you on top of our vending machine, guy? No one. And it was very busy. It was during lunchtime. And then things like this, like shredder bins. So you have the lock there, but, all you have to do is just force up the side and stick your hand in there and pull out. Shredder bin bingo is what we like to call it. So,
Yeah, we've ran across that several times. We've ran across where they use wafer locks to protect their sensitive data, able to pop that quickly. And we oftentimes we run across these really massive shredder bins, and they're designed to be lifted by a forklift. So in the sides of them have the forklift holes, and you can just shove your arm in the forklift hole and pull out the documents. So they've got these really nice locks on. I think there's like some kind of best lock, and we tried picking the lock just to show that we could do that, but there was really no point at that.
Didn't need to. So before they put the best lock, they had a master lock on it a previous year. We picked it, and the bin, like, it's taller than what I can reach up. And it's very long, and it's gigantic, and it's super bright blue. It's very big. So, that lock was picked, and then just for proof of concept and for fun, that may or may not have been willed outside right in front of the point of contact's office window. So, yeah.
I took a picture of that. He didn't like that
too
much.
Yeah, we thought it was funny.
But when you're doing this kind of thing, look for sensitive areas, look for high-risk areas, look at the physical security controls. Yeah, they may have like a turnstile in the front. It may be proximity badge in and out, and they have a security guard. But in the back, what does it look like?
And you can also, and it's, tying back to Red Team where you're using, like the phishing, all that stuff. If you have enough work, you've done enough work, then you can call in, you can spoof the number and say, hey, security guard, this is so-and-so from IT. I've got some guys coming in. Can you let them in or whatever? And, as long as you plan and execute that well, it will work.
So we were talking about like, the front door having coverage. But if you go in the back, in this particular example, they had the door, there was a pretty big gap in it, but they had a deviated strike plate. And their PTZ camera, that was the only coverage that they had over the door, but it was clouded up by weather. It was weather worn.
Very old.
The dome was like scratched up. So I don't know what their security guard could see, but I knew he couldn't see me. And so, yeah, Brent and I were doing this. We recorded this just for the client.
I think you have to click it over there.
So we're just standing outside, showing that the door was locked. So we close the door, we lock it, and then I just take a shove knife. And the same example too, like the way the strike plate was on another door inside. Brent and I both used the shove knife, and we kind of tag team to get around the strike plate, and was able to bypass another biometric, like a access control. And so you're able to bypass a lot of these electronic controls and these things. These companies spend several thousands of dollars implementing, and then you can bypass it with a piece of plastic that you can get for $5, or a shove knife that you can get for $14 from Sparrows, or a crash bar tool, or under the door tool. All these things that are really easily available, that if you're too lazy to build on your own, then you can buy on the internet. And hey, I have these now. So
one of the things that we like to do whenever we're doing these assessments is we like to use tools that anybody can go buy on the internet for super cheap. So whether it's a piece of plastic or like the crash bar tool I was just holding, or shove knives or anything. And by the way, I have all of that here with me if you guys are interested in seeing it after the talk. But the whole reason we do that is to say, hey, you guys, like, this is how easy some of these things are to bypass. You don't have to have a locksmith license or anything to buy these tools. You just need, credit card, and that's it.
So this next video, I was out front with the security guard and just talking to him. And I'm not sure how I got stirred up the conversation, but he had some badges laying there. And I had my Proxmark III easy little tiny device, and I ended up putting it in emulation mode, and I just set it on top of it, and I was able to capture a badge. And then I go around to the back door where the security guard is not covering the area, and they have this really nice turnstile. It's like glass. You have to badge in, you have to badge out, and I was able to use the security guard's badge using the Proxmark to get into the building, and from there I had access to all the area, the entire facility, because it was a security guard, and he had unfettered access. So glass doors open, and that was it.
And I think that's the most expensive tool that we use is the Proxmark.
And even if you can't afford a Proxmark, or you don't feel confident using stuff like that, just print off a badge and shove it in the sleeve, or glue it to an HID, a blank HID or PVC, and oftentimes people aren't going to question you, because the easiest way to get into a building is to tailgate or to piggyback. It has been for several years, and it still is.
Yep.
And just walking in behind, especially if you have a badge and it looks like you work there, you can even flip it over and show the white side of the badge, and oftentimes people aren't going to say anything, especially if you're on the phone, you got something in your hands, you're delivering pizza for the team pizza party upstairs.
Balloons work great.
Balloons or whatever. So,
and again, back to the badge thing. People that, just a show of hands, if you have to badge in for work, how many of those, the back side of that badge is just blank white? Yeah. So, if your badge, your fake badge is blank on both sides, people are just going to assume your badge is flipped over, right? So you can even do things like that. Or just to even see if anyone's paying attention, you don't even wear a badge. Or know a guy that actually just cut out a piece of paper and took a red crayon and scribbled with a red crayon and wore that around, and no one questioned it. So
at one time, actually, there was a facility, and it was a really rushed assessment. They said, hey, we don't really want a full-blown red team, but we really want to review our security awareness and the physical access controls. Can you do this assessment? So I only had like 1 day to do it. I ended up tailgating, I picked the lock to a fire escape because they turn off the alarms during the day, during production hours. They turn off the alarms on the fire escape, picked the lock because it was an old core. They didn't have badge access in the fire escape. And I got in that way, and I was able to go up and down the floors. But from there, I got to an administration office. It was actually their marketing department. And I got a good look at their badges at that time, and I had a plastic badge sleeve and a keter, and then I ended up going in there and ripping up an envelope that had their logo on it, a bunch of other stuff, and I played arts and crafts in their bathroom for a little while, and I ended up shoving that in there, and that worked the entire time. Nobody asked any questions because they didn't have photo ID on the badge. It was just their logo and a number. And so things like that, sometimes you have to kind of think on the fly, how can I do this in such a short amount of time? Ideally, you want to do these kinds of assessments with ample amount of time, because criminals aren't going to just be like, hey, you know what, today I think I'm going to break into that corporation.
They take their time.
So.
And something I've noticed too, before any physical assessment, I always go to Twitter or some other social media and search the company, because if they have a corporate account, chances are they're going to post pictures of some sort of company outing or some company barbecue or picnic or something. And it's, all the coworkers around and they have their badges. So all you got to do is zoom in and you got a picture of what their badge looks like before you even show up. If you're not able to do that, a lot of times I've been fortunate enough with a lot of places I've gone into, there's usually a cafe or something that's close. So you go camp out in there for a while and see what's going on. And there have been times where I've sat at a table right next to an employee and their badge was perfectly placed, where I'm this far from them and I have Photoshop and I'm looking at their badge, like making a fake badge right next to them in Photoshop. And then I go back to my hotel and print it off. And it works. So, just do some recon too.
Brent mentioned these corporate events too. Like, we have a couple of different clients that have these annual barbecues, and they're perfect times to go into these things, because you go to the barbecue, there's tons of people around. Most people don't even have their badges on, or if they do, it's in their pocket or something. They're outside, people are playing volleyball, eating. We feed ourselves, so we partake of the free food, and then we end up following the swarms of people that are coming in and out of the building.
And you always have like the guy that DJs on the weekend playing like We Are Family and stuff on the, it's like the super corporate music
Very
playlist.
Corporate, with the Synergy banner and all that stuff on it. So, we'd actually, a funny story is we did this to one client. We got inside and they were taking pictures. So they're taking pictures of employees. You can stand in front of the banner and stuff. And they look at us. They're like, hey guys, did you guys get your picture? And we're like, no. This would be perfect proof of concept to put in the report. And so
thanks for the free food. Here's a picture of your company barbecue.
Right. And there was actually another guy too, an actual employee that was there. We didn't know him, but we pulled him into the picture with us, and we're taking the picture and we're all like giving the thumbs up, and it says Synergy and it's got the company logo on the back and all this stuff. And what was funny is
he had this like, who are you guys? It was
well, what's funny too is this same guy. The reason why we pulled him in is that I had this binder with the badge cloner in it, and I kind of tapped him on the chest. I was like, hey man, you want to get in this? Come on.
The guy's badge.
And so I got his badge from that. So, be a little bit leery of people that get too close to you.
Yeah.
So demonstrate some of the discovered flaws to the client. So I was saying this before, if the client's cool with you recording, that's perfect. because if you mess up, you can do it again and record it. But if they're walking around, you can show them, be able to show this stuff, demonstrate these things. In this picture on the left here, I'm demonstrating to the client the under the door tool. Meanwhile, Drew Culberson, one of our coworkers, is looking through. There's kind of the slotted window, so he's looking through the window, guiding me. He's like, "Oh, you're close. You're close. Ah, got it." Yep. And then just pull the lever handle, and we got in.
Has anybody not seen an under the door tool? It's super high tech, right? And super high tech. So there's another wire that's in my bag. So what Tim is doing right here, there's enough physical gap under the door where you basically, you slide this thing under the door. There's the lever handle. It comes around on top of it, and then you pull another wire, and it pulls the handle open. So, I mean, you could make one of these for yourself.
These things are really easy to make.
Like $15 or something.
You can get a piano wire. The thing with that, if you make it, you want to make sure that the string is at least coated, or you're going to saw the bottom of the door, and the client doesn't like that.
It's going to be pretty loud, too. And that's another thing, too. If you try to use tools like this while you're trying to be quiet and not be found, first of all, you probably don't know who or what's on the other side of the door. Second of all, it's like that while you're using it, so it's not quiet. So if that's a risk you're willing to take, go for it.
Yeah, be mindful of that, or have some kind of excuse why you're doing it too. I've had a security guard approach me one time when I was picking a lock, and I looked around, nobody was around. I'm sitting there like this, and he approaches me, and he's an armed security guard, comes up behind me, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Hey, just checking the core on this lock. You know, I'm working with facilities. We're kind of testing these. We're going to replace the locking cores, replacing the tumbler locks with some dimple locks. So, you know, I'm just testing. So, no. And he didn't buy my lie. So I gave him the fake letter of authorization, which said that I was allowed to do this. I was supposed to be doing it. I'm reviewing this and that. And he looked through it, and he's like, "Oh, okay. Well, cool." I'm like, "Oh, great. Actually, can you tell the rest of the security guards that I'm going to be doing this for a while? That way they don't bother me either?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'll do that." So he actually did that, and I was able to walk around the area. Security guards walked past me. I'm waving to them, and hello.
You forgot to tell the point when he read that, he was like, "Oh, cool, I'm in security too." That's like what he's saying.
Yeah.
They're like instant security buddies. So
Right.
Tim wasn't bothered for the rest of the time.
In a lot of our talks, I love to tag security guards. They're some of my favorites because once you get them on their side, then you pretty much have access to the entire facility.
Yeah, and we don't, like the security guards LOL talk that we have, we don't do talks like that to make fun of security guards by any means. The whole reason we have that talk is to point out the flaw that you'll have companies that have a very large building with multiple entrances, and they put basically the weight of their physical security program on one, maybe two security guards that care so much that they sit around and knit a blanket. You know,
they're not getting paid enough to care either. Yeah. You know, they're sitting there, yay, I'm going to sit there and watch YouTube all day. And that happens, especially at night. Security guards get bored. They're there working third shift, and they're going to stay up all night just watching YouTube or Netflix or something. And it's easy to just kind of walk in at times or pretend you're part of the cleaning crew.
Yeah.
Talk about that other.
Sure. Yeah. So this is just another quick thing too. It's a normal bypass. So there's a request to exit sensor here, and just with the simple, you know, the compressed air, you turn it upside down where it makes the cloud. You spray it the right angle, and it pops the door right open. Granted, when you walk through the other side, it's awful because it's like super bitter. It has the bitterants or whatever they call it in it. And it tastes awful, but you have access.
You know, there's several ways to bypass the request for exit sensors too. You know, like Dave Kennedy did one with a vape. Deviant Ollin's done it with whiskey. You know, there's several ways to do this, but this is super easy. And actually, we found that canned air. It was sitting on a desk, so we didn't even think about using it until we found that sitting on a desk. It was like, okay, well, let's try this out.
This is ours now.
We did it, yeah.
And it worked. And right on the other side of that door too, for this client, was the room where they actually printed out employee badges and everything. So we got in there and found some that had not been deactivated yet in a very secure place, hidden under a keyboard. And so we grabbed those, and that gave us access to several other areas too. So if you're doing physical assessment, just make sure you're checking, you know, clean desk policy, checking that stuff. We find passwords all the time under keyboards, in desks, sometimes pinned up on cubicle and stuff. So you have a question? Yeah. Oh, well, Deviant Olem. Yeah, so if you haven't seen the video of Deviant Olem, he was walking by. It was for a bank, and they have the same request to exit sensor, and he pulls the door open just enough, and sprays the whiskey in there, and it trips the sensor.
Same way you blow fire, like with the alcohol in your mouth, you just got to get that mist. So the mist is what trips the sensor. Yeah. So, but some of these sensors are also heat activated, so you have to kind of work with that too. So whether you're using like the canned air, I mean that actually works because of the temperature of the air. It's not heat, but it is cold, and sometimes it'll trip some of those because it confuses it, I guess. But then other times you can just use like a hand warmer or something like that to mimic body heat. So hybrid assessments. We kind of talked about this. We use hybrid loosely, but oftentimes when we do this, the client will provide, hey, this is the areas we want you to get a hold of. These are the people we want you to target. This is the departments we want you to target. And it's kind of a collaborative effort.
Almost like a gray box or something.
Yeah, it's almost like a partial disclosure or a gray box type of assessment. Sometimes we'll say, hey, we're going to be here, or we've made it inside. Now, what would you like us to do? Or they'll give us free reign. But having that open communication always great with a point of contact. Don't have several points of contact because there's a greater risk that they're going to spread it around the entire office. Because this has happened before too, where we had like 6 people on the kickoff call, and already that's kind of a red flag. It's like, oh, great.
They're going to tell people.
They're probably going to be prepared for us. So we get there, and they walk up to us as soon as we get in. Hey, are you guys the guys that are supposed to be doing that assessment? No,
I work here.
How do you know this?
Here's my blank badge. Yeah. So I've even had, to Tim's point, I've even had a part where one client, so the first building I got into, I was able to get into it and was left unattended in the server room and, did a bunch of stuff. And so I called the point of contact. I was like, hey, this is how the first one went. And they're like, oh, okay. So you're headed to this location now? Like, yeah. I'm like, what kind of car are you driving? And I don't know why I answered, but I did. So there was a very large industrial park area with like several buildings, large parking lot. So I'll pull up, get out of my car, start walking. Before I even really get to the building, the security guard walks out and he was like, hey, can I help you? And he's like, no, come with me. And I was like, okay. So basically he ended up telling me, yeah, I watched you as soon as you were pulling into the parking lot. And I was like, how? Then I was like, oh, that's how. So. Yeah. Unfortunately, some people care more about the outcome of a report than the security posture of their company.
But something to keep in mind too, when you rent a car, look at the license plate, because sometimes if a security guard's very astute, they will look at that license plate as you're driving around, and if it's an out-of-state license plate, they're going to have questions. They're not going to believe that you're an employee that works there, perhaps. So these are things also to consider.
So bold versus safe, this is what we're talking about. Okay. Do you just want to sort of skirt around and see what things you can do without being challenged? Or do you want to see what all it takes, again, to be, before you're caught, before someone says, what the heck are you doing? Like, why the heck are you on top of a vending machine, for example? So, this is one of my favorite stories from assessment that Tim and I did together, where we basically went in, we established a report. So we didn't come in through the front, we came in through the side because we already had access. We approached the security guard. Long story short, we're here to do badge inventory. And so she says, oh, well, here's our big binder. And Tim's like, well, I need to, write some things down. And so I was like, well, Tim, why don't you go to the other side and sit down since it's going to take a while? And she was like, oh yeah, come sit down. So
I wish I could show her face because she's cracking up because I'm such a funny person. But I'm making her laugh. We're cracking jokes with her. And she's got this huge binder full of these active badges. And I'm just going through pretending that I'm writing them down, but I've got my clipboard with the RFID cloner on it. And I'm sitting there and I'm basically harvesting all these badges while I'm cracking jokes with her.
So,
go ahead.
Oh, so here she is, laughing. There's Tim. There's the clipboard. So as he's sitting there, he's like, okay, so what about your contractor badges? She gets up, comes and shows them to him. There she is.
Brings another binder. Well, here's the contractor
here we
badges. Go. Starts flipping it over for me.
So we have another picture at one point where he's back there with his feet propped up on the security guard desk with his clipboard, like rubbing. And it's like, so again, he's like, oh, so, all right, there's the And he sets it down and like, yeah, we've been pretty busy today, and we still have a couple more facilities to go to, and like doing this, and she's not even saying anything.
She's not paying attention. She doesn't know what I'm doing exactly, and she's not paying attention to that because, they don't really cover that in security awareness training or security guard training, whatever. They don't cover that kind of stuff. So it's very important that you have a pretty robust security awareness training that you have your contractors and you have your employees take. So regardless if it's an internal security guard, an external one, or the lady that does everything. You don't have a security guard. You have your receptionist, and she's sitting there. So those people are the first people that you see when you walk in, and oftentimes the first people you have to encounter when there's no other alternative. So you can't go to the back. You can't use a shove knife to get in the back door. You can't, piggyback to the side because of X, Y, Z. So sometimes you have to go straight through there, and you have to encounter these people. So it's very important that they have a strong sense of security awareness and a pretty diverse understanding of the technologies that hackers and criminals can use.
And we mentioned the fake letter of authorization earlier. So something I want to point out, a caution to that is, so let's say you walk on site and someone says, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" And you pull out a letter that says, "Oh, this is me. I'm here doing inventory," or whatever. And they look at it and they see the White House address or whatever, and they say, "No, you're not. Like, who are you? What are you doing here?" And then you try to pull out the real letter, they're going to be, no. It's like, David Copperfield used to have all these letters coming out of your pocket or something.
That didn't work. Let's try this one.
Yeah, what color would you like? Where's this one? Here's a different card stock. It's not going to go over very well. So just a word of caution that it could be brilliant, and, like some of the things we've talked about were like, "Oh, okay, cool, go ahead." And no one bothers you. Or if you show them the real one right away, they're like, "Oh, okay, so now what do we do?" And you say, "Well, just let me continue," which sometimes that is part of it. Or other times, if it doesn't work out, then they'll say, "Come with me."
And really encourage them too. Like if they are set on it, you're not supposed to be here. They don't buy it. They're not buying the real letter either. Really encourage them to look up the point of contact. So say, hey, look in your global. If you don't believe this, go ahead and pull up global, your employee directory or whatever. Call this person and validate before you call the police on me. Yeah. And this gets, ugly.
Yeah. And so some of the verbiage that is good to put in the letter of authorization or even the statement of work with the client is that the client will go to all means possible to prevent the assessor from being apprehended by any local, state, or federal authorities, which is great to put in there because nobody wants to be arrested, especially by the FBI. So, escalation, point of contact, legal documentation. So, as we were just talking about, if you are caught, if something goes wrong, or, you're stuck in a man trap and it's after hours and no one's coming, or, whatever bad thing you could imagine, make sure that you have a point of contact that's actually going to be around. I've had a few different times where I've needed to call the contact and say, "Hey, did this, so-and-so, stopped me," but you couldn't get a hold of that person because they forgot and went on vacation that week and they weren't answering their phone. And they were like the only person that knew about it. So then, an hour or two later, you finally get it sorted out, but, that's not a fun situation to be in. So you always want to make sure that you really establish that with the client. Like, hey, you are going to be around, right? You are going to have your phone. Like, do you charge your phone often so it's not dead at like the worst possible moment? So,
also keep in mind too, one assessment that I did, we were looking around, we're like, how are we going to get into this place? It's pretty secure. I just watched a video where this guy had bought a ladder, and he got into several places walking around with this ladder. And I was like, hey, why don't we see, since they're renting this facility out, why don't we see who the property manager is? So we get online, we find out who the property manager is. Write up a letter saying that we're there to replace the sprinkler heads because there's been a recall, and we need to check all the facilities that we manage. So we had one guy dressed up in like a flannel. He didn't shave for a little bit. He had the ladder, and he had this fake letter with my number on it. But kudos to the client. When they approached him and he gave them that letter, they did not call the number on that. They pulled him up from their director and they called him. And so they call this guy. They're like, hey, there's somebody here looking at the sprinkler heads. What he actually done is he put a drop box in there, and we were able to connect to it remotely from outside wirelessly. And so we'd already done that. We're doing this, but he's up front, and they're kind of giving him the holding him to fire. And they end up calling this person. They're like, yeah, there's somebody here. What did you say your name is? He goes, oh, yeah, it's John. He goes, yeah, did you send a John guy here to do a recall or look at the sprinkler heads? No. Well, there's a guy here, and he's saying that, well, let me talk to him. So they pass the phone over to Michael, my coworker, and he picks up the phone, and he's like, oh, hey, boss. Yeah, I'm finishing up this place, and I'll be finished real quick. It won't take me any time. Yeah, sorry for the confusion. I must have done this. And and the guy's yelling at him as he's talking over to him, and he ends up hanging up on the guy. So he's like, all right, well, I'll see you guys later. I'm done. And he's trying to get out. The guy calls back. And so that kind of got a little ugly, and we had to talk our way out of smoothing that over. But that's one of the ways. So you can also use several other guises as well. You know, he could have pulled out a fake letter at that point and said, well, actually, I'm here with Fish Nugget Security, and we're doing this assessment, and good job, guys. But he didn't do that because that situation, it probably wouldn't have been advisable.
Yeah.
We only have
McNugget Security.
Yeah. So we got a few more slides here. We kind of ramble a little bit, so we're going to be rushing through these. I know we only have like 5 more minutes.
Yeah, it's probably not, breaking doors down unless the client says, if you break something, cool. So a long time ago, the closed circuit televisions, really old, you could point a high-powered laser at those and pop the sensor in them, and the camera was dead. So, if that stuff's in scope, that's cool because no one's ever going to let you do that. So, knock yourself out. So, as far as like bypass methods, things like that, know what you're doing. Don't go on site and be like, oh, let me see if I know how to lockpick, and then you break it off in the keyway or something.
It's the same as technical stuff too. You're learning a new tool, you downloaded this new awesome script that you found. Don't go on site and use it in production. That's what you have your labs for. That's what you have your practice rooms for. Yeah. And again, we're kind of rushing this, but professional liar, I always encourage people to take improv classes because social engineering is a lot of improv. If you can't roll with the punches and change your story and lie well, then you're going to have a difficult time when someone's challenged you, especially if they're very stubborn and they're not just kind of letting you go. They're going to challenge you and they're going to ask you questions. So it's very good to be able to have that improvisational skills.
Yeah, not everyone is afraid of confrontation. So you will eventually run into those people that are, very stern with you. So you got to know how to weasel your way out of that. Yeah, we talked about this already as far as like talking to the client. What's the trophy? Is it for us to get in and get domain admin however we need to? Or is it, sensitive files or whatever? So know what the trophy is instead of like, yeah, I got in, I used your bathroom and ate barbecue and then I went home. So, wait for your report on that. So, practical versus impractical. If you have like some, mil-spec tactical bag with hacker patches all over it, those actually have one of those, but if I'm doing an internal or if I'm doing a physical assessment and I don't want to be called out, I'll use, just something that's a bit more plain, like just this backpack or maybe...
Or a laptop bag or something like that.
Yeah,
just don't have your pineapple and your Hack 5 stickers all over your stuff if you're trying to be covert. If you want to get caught and you want to see if they ask questions, then yeah, by all means do that. And, I love patches and pins as much as anybody else, but when you're trying to be sneaky, you don't look like this guy either. Yeah. I got all of my tools here, and I'm here.
Wi-Fi antenna sticking out.
I'm here to test your network connectivity, and then you got a huge bag full of physical bypass tools.
Yeah, and again, if they do want to see how long does it take someone to ask you what you're doing, then those bags and things are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Just know what you're trying to accomplish within the assessment. So
the color of the bag is also important, and so is your clothes. So if you want to really stand out, wear something bright. If you don't wear a neutral color bag, a neutral color shirt, or whatever, so that there's less likely they're going to approach you and question you.
So I've found out most of the physicals that I do lately, I wear a suit, like full suit, maybe not a tie, unless I see others. But when you go in, you're wearing a suit that's fitted, and you look like you are some sort of professional for whatever. People are more likely to buy that than if you come in with a polo and like wrinkled pants or whatever, and they're like, okay, well, let's talk.
Yeah. So, and then also look at the dress code too. So the day before, do some recon, passive reconnaissance, drive around, see what the dress code is. Are you allowed to have a beard? Can you have a man bun? Like for that example there, I was growing my hair and beard out for a role, and so I had to change my guy. So I couldn't pretend to be an employee because everybody's clean shaven there. So I pretended to be a contractor, and Brent was the guy in the nice suit with a clean shaven militant look who was escorting me around.
Yeah, and so things like that work out sometimes. tools. So again, I have tools up here to show you. I love these things, these griddits. So bags, if I need to grab something quick, I have a couple of these. I can just reach down. So if I need my shrum tool or bypass tool, or if I want to drop my Raspberry Pi somewhere, or my land turtle, or if I access a server and I need a keyboard, just all sorts of things, rubber duckies, against some bypass tools, shims. I don't smoke, but when I find smoker areas, I smoke. So those are things to consider too. So it's just, take the tools that you need. If you don't need things, don't clutter your bag with them so you're not trying to fumble around and find things. So this, you'll probably have to pause because we're running out of time, but these are just toolkit examples. And again, I actually have a toolkit here if you want to come see it after the talk. And these are not exhaustive. These are just depending on maybe certain assessment types that you're on.
There's another one that's a little more expanded, but again, try to keep it tight. You've probably seen pictures from Jason Street and these guys that carry tons of tools in there, and they're able to because it's organized and it's nice and neat in the bag.
Like
so
the
don't
suit
just
of
sew
Doom.
and fill up your big bag full of these tools, and then you're digging through it, not knowing which one you're grabbing and stuff. So
has anybody seen Jason's suit of Doom that he has now? It's like this custom tailored suit that he had made with all these hidden pockets in the sleeves. And he puts everything in there. He doesn't even need a backpack. And he walks around and he has drop boxes, he has bypass tools, everything. It's brilliant. So it's like, you don't even have a bag sticking out when you do that. So, we need your tailor information, Jason.
So miscellaneous considerations, never show up on site when you're like, crap, I forgot this, or I forgot
my computer.
Or, I don't have internet access now because of XYZ, I can't remember this command. Something like the Red Team field manual could be handy, or your own little notebook. Travel tips, real quick. Just want to mention this. So the travel tips. So recently the TSA is, not all airports are doing this right now, but some of them are. Anything the size of a cell phone or larger that is electronic, they will make you take it out of your bag. So if you're carrying all these tools, I've been stopped 3 times in the last 2 weeks of travel where they pull me over because I've got my Proxmark in there, and it's tiny. And they question it and make me take it out of the bag. And then for whatever reason, they question, what is this? What do you use it for? And I'm like, do you really need to know that? And so they don't. You don't want to be sassy with the TSA agent, but also, you want to carry what's approved too. So maybe a letter or something, print off something that TSA approved items. Well, I'm allowed to have these lockpicks. I'm allowed to have this.
Yeah, and they don't make you pull those out if you're TSA pre. If you're pre-check, you won't have to pull out all those individual items, which is great. So I think we're out of time, but we love to take any questions anybody has. Please come and see us with your questions. That way we can move out of the way and make time for the next speaker. So thank you guys so much.
Thanks, guys.